I didn't always think I wanted to be a writer, but I certainly always read very passionately, very deeply. So, it was always true that the world of books seemed the more vivid, magical, more real world than the actual real world. And I think a lot of it did have to do with, this was India before it opened its doors to the larger world economically. So it really was quite a different country. Delhi was a quiet city. Books really meant everything, I think. Summer afternoons were very long. The world didn't arrive in any other way, really, other than books. So while we were at home, I think we read as if we were exiles. That was what the bookshelf meant, I think, to my mother and also to me as a child. But I remember very vividly the books on the shelf, the colors, where every book was. It's sad that bookshelf no longer exists. That house is gone and the books are gone. So it is sad. It lives on only in my memory now. English was my first language. Hindi was something I would speak, but English was the reading language. But therefore, because the publishing world in India was so small for publishing books in English, there's very little coming out, a completely different scene from the one today. So the bookshelf was very international. It was books from all over the world, a lot of translated books, Russian writers translated, but otherwise Dickens and Virginia Woolf and a lot of American writers, which probably helped a lot when I arrived in America. It seemed so strange, but thank goodness I had read those books. I had read Capote and I had read Flannery O'Connor. And so when I left, I realized, yes, those books had allowed me to become a more successful and humane traveler. No matter how great the difference seemed between India and the rest of the world, I did have that humane place of books, So it was always books that meant something. I don't think I will ever read in the same way again, in fact, as I read when I was a child. Those afternoons that seemed to last really forever. You don't feel like time is ever going to move. But occasionally I find that again. I often write in Mexico, say, and I don't have internet, and I don't have television, and I do have experiences of sitting on a veranda with rain coming down, rather like here, and being able to read, reading, say, Dostoyevsky in the way you think you should read Dostoyevsky, like lightning and thunder and rain coming down. And so occasionally I do manage to find that reading experience again. When I arrived in America, I was 13 or 14, and I had to immediately go to high school there. And I remember looking at cheerleaders for the first time in my life and being kind of amazed that this was what was happening. The men were being sent off to war, and there was a tribe dancing on this side. I think that sometimes you feel if this world exists, then the other could not. It's just impossible that these two places that seem to be so contradictory do exist in the same on the same globe. And I think I would not have been able to grasp American life as happily as I did. I mean, I was happy in that high school, I remember, because I remembered all the books that I had read. And, if you've read Truman Capote writing about his aunt, who's considered both a little slow and a bit odd, and her fragility, or you've read Death of a Salesman, and you think, ah, everyone at the margins of power is the same, no matter where in the world. This is true. So you think everyone is the same in the hands of a good novelist. And to be, a book undoes a rhetoric of power. And when you are making that journey to the most powerful side of the world from a much less powerful side of the world, and the power divide is so enormous, and you're negotiating that as a person, I think literature is, it's so important. It's wonderful to be an immigrant if you're a novelist. It's an ideal place to be. You're so aware of being able to invent this, invent that, of movement, of stories, and you meet so many people. It's just fascinating. Two sides of the world. It sort of gives you so much material, and the kind of displacement you experience is something we also seek out in art. It's something everyone reads a book for. You read a book to be able to transform yourself. You travel in order to become a different person, and perhaps even to recreate your life backwards. So you return to a new version of yourself. So the language, all that vocabulary of immigration and novel writing, can really overlap. Well, it is an effortless passing of time, which I think is the happiest any person can be, is when you don't even notice that the years are going by. So quite often when I finish a book and I think, goodness, my youth has gone. I spent it writing Inheritance of Loss. When I was finished with it, it was a major life experience that had taken place within the pages of my novel. I don't mind that it takes a long while. I think it just takes as long as it does take, and it's always a process of discovery. I don't know the story before I begin, and because I'm working from an unknown world and a moving world and a kind of place between different places, I think it's always interesting to me how I'll be able to fashion a book out of cobwebs, in a way, lots of transformations, a lot of ghosts, a lot of echoes. So it's all about finding the echoes, the patterns, the rhythms that will make a narrative that doesn't really necessarily have a plot. It's these echoes that give it momentum. So in a way, it feels like, I don't want to say it's exactly a mystical experience, but it is. It is a moment when you are not sure if the book is yourself, or you are becoming the book, or if you're living your life in order to write certain scenes, in order to write the book. It becomes a very strange life experience, being immersed in a novel. And people often say, well, do you have writer's block? Why is it taking you so long? And I think, well, I must, because I'm sitting for months sometimes. I'm sitting certainly for, not all the time for months, but I may just spend days staring at the computer screen and perhaps mulling over a sentence, changing a word here or there. But it's not unhappiness for me not to be moving quickly. In a way, the sun comes in, you hear the windows open. I feel part of larger world, larger life, and it feels like a very happy experience to be contemplating my novel, even if I'm not really working.